Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey, we try to keep things simple here at Making Data Simple. We don't always talk about data. In fact, I don't even know if we're going to talk about data today. We'll have to see. But welcome back. Al Martin here, your host. I am with Meg Gallagher today. Let me give you a quick background on Meg. To start, the fun part is avid rock climber, a passionate advocate for enhancing digital services for citizens and students in state, local governments, and higher education. She's the director of sales at WalkMe. I got to briefly know Meg when we were in Jefferson City, Missouri. I had a quick pitch when they had AI Innovation Day. I was invited to talk about AI, my views on AI. I think I was probably a little too candid, but maybe more candid than some of the other presenters. You'll have to give me some feedback on that on live on the air here. But during that conversation, I'd walked over to my chair, and sitting up in front, kudos to you for being in the front of the room, was Meg. And I think she had a colleague with her, and we started talking. She started talking to me about WalkMe. It's kind of an interesting name, and it's around digital services. So that's what brought us here. Meg, welcome to the show. It's great to see you again. I hope you're well.
Thank you, Al. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor, really, to have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about WalkMe and a little bit more about my passion for rock climbing as well.
You know how I know I already like you is because I'm looking over, like, if you're listening, obviously, we have video as well. You're only going to get to listen, sorry. But if I look over your right shoulder, I see like is that a mini bar? It looks like a mini bar.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's mini. I'd say it's full on. I've got at least two of every spirit. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, you got like a Coca-Cola above it, but then it looks like a bunch of spirits underneath.
Yeah.
You got a Coca-Cola sign, I should say, above it, and then spirits underneath. I don't think there's any space to put another bottle on that table.
Thankfully, you can't see the floor because the floor has as well.
Wow. So what's your favorite drink then?
Ooh, that is a tough one. As a former cocktail bartender, I'm always split between two favorite spirits that I like to mix with, which is gin and rum. I think both of them are very interesting as a spirit alone. I would say something like vodka kind of pales in comparison. And as far as just drinking straight spirit with nothing else, tequila girl all the way. So if I'm not doing any mixing whatsoever, tequila, reposado, añejo.
Wow.
Versus if I'm doing a cocktail with mixed ingredients, I'm going to pull a gin or a rum out.
No bourbon in there at all? That's
I used to be a bourbon girly, but I have to say, maybe as I've gotten older, my palate's become a little bit more refined in the sense that things that taste like they have a lot of sugar in them just don't do it for me. So I used to be a big bourbon person. I actually have a bottle of Pappy on that bar, Pappy Ben Winkle for all you bourbon drinkers out there, as well as a bottle of Thomas Handy from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, which is actually a rye. But yes, I do have two things on there that I think bourbon drinkers would like a lot.
All right, forget WalkMe. Let's start talking about, yeah, you've talked my language. I have three bottles of Pappy's upstairs, but they're all empty. I think near to empty. They're very close. Let's put it that way. It does. Look, is it worth the money that I paid for it? Absolutely not. However, it's pretty good. I have to say there is a difference. And I'm a big fan of, well, look, I just do straight bourbon, and I don't like it to taste sweet either, so I don't mix it with anything. However, I do like a good blackberry bramble, but I put bourbon in the bramble.
That sounds
you
really
probably
good.
Put rum or something.
Yes.
As a bartender, it's always rum, right?
I mean, I'm a person who loves the intricacies of cocktail making, and I'd say it doesn't get any more intricate than a tiki drink, which, on average likely has at least 6 ingredients, but I've seen tiki drinks with as many as 10 to 12 ingredients in them.
Very good. Very nice. This is terrific. You didn't think you were going to talk about this, did you? We're completely off the rails. That's how it works here. That's how it goes. All right. Very good. Where are you from originally?
I'm from New Jersey, but I currently live in South Lake Tahoe, California, and have been here for 5+ years.
I want to get some of your background, but before I just ask the open-ended question, How do you end up in Jefferson City, Missouri?
I think that's a great question. So I am the director of the fantastic SLED team here at WalkMe. We stood up a public sector team by the great Billy Biggs. He is our VP of public sector, our fearless leader. He started down that path, I think, over 3 years ago now. And then we, crafted a SLED team soon thereafter the federal practice was established. And so I found myself actually being a revenue enablement manager of those new hires. I had been one of the top sellers at WalkMe and was taking some time to enable all of our new hires. And I found myself really gravitating towards his leadership style and, fell into SLED, which, I learned maybe the hard way that it's likely the most difficult segment, just due to the fact that if you've been to one state, you've been to one state, and every state has different
Yes,
every state has different buying practices, contract vehicles, preferred partners. So I found myself in Jeff City with my fantastic account executive, Laura, because we were invited to this AI Innovation Day. And we wanted to be able to understand the nuances of what the state was going through with, trying to implement or wrap their arms around this new buzzword, which is AI.
You spend your days in Tahoe, though, and then you travel like 5 days a week then?
I do a fair bit of travel. Yes, I was actually just in Lake Placid, New York for the SUNY Tech Conference, which was fantastic. And I will find myself soon traveling again, likely to Sacramento, which is a lot closer than any of the other state capitals to me. It's only about an hour and a half drive.
So this all comes together, though. Rock climbing, Tahoe, is that what brings you there?
Absolutely. Also, my husband is a native Californian. And when we moved to North Carolina together in 2015, I promised him, I said, hey, if this isn't for you, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out where it makes sense for both of us. And so that's where my origins at WalkMe began, when I worked out of the Raleigh office. And after being one of the top performers on the sales team, I said, we don't have a remote sort of practice here as far as allowing employees to work remotely, but I really want to move to Tahoe. My husband and I are avid rock climbers. He's from California. What do you say you give me that, rubber stamp approval on that? And, they actually agreed to it. So before COVID ever happened, I was lucky enough to land here in Tahoe.
Wow. Magic happens when you're good. That's why we're talking. By the way, for those of you listening, SLED, state, local education, in case you don't know. We're getting ahead of our skis. Speaking of Tahoe, see how good I am?
Yeah.
Let's take a step back and tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your background. I know we already got the rock climbing. We already know you're in Tahoe, etc. But go even back further. What's your history? What's your education? What ultimately brings you to WalkMe?
I'll keep it as brief as I possibly can with giving you the full rundown. So I have a college degree in sociology. I ended up straight out of college moving down to North Carolina. And from there, I became a real estate agent and cocktail bartender. The two actually go hand in hand because as a 25-year-old, nobody trusts you when you haven't purchased your own home before to be a real estate agent when the median age of a real estate agent is somewhere in the realm of 55 in that market. So I had to figure out a unique way to establish a client base. So by being a cocktail bartender, it was actually fantastic because I established regulars who were typically graduate students that were coming from out of state. And at some point, they wanted to set down roots, establish roots, and think about a home purchase. So as a real estate agent and cocktail bartender, I eventually made my way to California. There's no reciprocity on the real estate side. So had to start afresh and ended up working at a rock climbing gym because I had just found this new love in my life, which was rock climbing. Now that may sound absurd, but for anybody who's in this niche community, it has a bit of a kind of cult-like vibe to it in the sense that once you get excited about rock climbing, it unlocks a lot of possibilities for travel, going to new places, meeting new people. And so my love of rock climbing is kind of twofold. I love the problem solving aspect because there's something called the beta to a climb, which is how do I position my body? What holds do I use? What feet do I use? You have to really think about what's going to work well for me as an individual, not just what works for somebody who's 3 feet shorter or 3 feet taller. So it's going to be different for everyone. There's a problem solving aspect. And then there's the physicality, right? Can I physically do this move because it's beyond potentially my strength capabilities, or how could I figure it out where I use more technical beta to make the move easier for myself? So brings me to the outdoors, which is a passion of mine. And it includes being able to really rack my both brain and body and push it to the limit. So started working at a rock climbing gym, and then ultimately moved back to North Carolina with my current husband, where I started working at a software company. And that transitioned into starting to understand what possibilities lay in front of me from a tech company perspective, and landed a job at WalkMe as a customer success manager. So that went really well with my skill set of being a project manager on the real estate side, my people skills from working in the service industry. And after a year of having 100% retention with my customers, they said, "Hey, Meg, what do you think about being on the sales team?" And that just was kind of a perfect fit. And I guess from there on out, I've been in sales, whether it's being a top performer, enabling new people who are coming through, or most recently, joining the SLED team and leading my fearless group of account executives who sell across all 50 states.
Nicely done. Nicely done. So is it Cave Rock? What's the rock that's in Tahoe? Is that the one? Have you done that one?
So that's actually a tunnel that you drive through. There's no, to my knowledge, climbing on Cave Rock, because it is, you can climb to the top of it. It's a hike, more of actual, setting up gear and being able to clip in and sport climb and stuff like that. My discipline of rock climbing is something called bouldering. So I bring out crash pads into the woods, put them down at the base of a boulder, and then free climb them. I don't go over 20 to 25 feet, and I don't go typically higher than I know that I can when it comes to the grade of the boulder. But yeah, my husband and I practice the discipline of what we affectionately call pebble wrestling.
All right, cool. That's awesome. I have a guy that used to be on my team. He was a serious climber. So much so that they climb up high enough that the snow would cover the rock. And sometimes you wouldn't know if you're stepping on rock, snow, whatever, nothing. It could be ice.
Yeah.
Right. And so he'd always go with a partner, as you might imagine, and they strap strings to one another in case one falls,
Yes.
And then, it begged the question. I'm like, has anybody ever fell? And he goes, "Oh, yes." I said, "Tell me more." He goes, "Well, we were up, I don't know how many feet. I mean, let's put it this way. I'd be scared to death." He said, "My buddy hit a spot that was ice. He falls along the side." I said, "What do you do?" "Well, you got to do what you're trained to do." "Okay, what are you trained to do?" He says, "I jump on the other side." "So you voluntarily jump off the other side?" And he goes, "Yeah." So then so you're both like dangling on both sides? Exactly. I'm like, "Really? Doesn't that bother you?" And he's like, "Well, that's what you have to do. And then we both climb up at the same time. Otherwise, we both die. So that's how it works." And I'm like, that doesn't sound appealing at all.
Yeah, there's a certain aspect of rock climbers that I think we all have it in us, that we really enjoy living right on the edge. And you got to trust your gear, which is likely why I practice the discipline of bouldering. I just need my crash pads to absorb my fall. I don't need to make sure I tied in properly. And if I didn't, there could be a death situation. But kudos to people who do trad climbing, ice climbing, sport climbing. They all have to have a really strong, mechanism for preservation.
Look, I've done skydiving and stuff like that before, which is fantastic. I mean, if you want to have your heart in your throat, I'd recommend it. But boy, that jumping off the other side intentionally, that's something. I guess you got to do what you got to do. Otherwise, they're going to pull you off with them. Anyway, Yep. Is what it is. All right, let's try. Let me hear. I'm trying to focus. Try to focus. Okay, you got to tell me about WalkMe, and I want to learn a little bit about digital services. So I went out to the WalkMe site, and this is what I got. WalkMe is a digital adoption platform that helps businesses simplify the user experience and increase user engagement on their websites, mobile apps, and software platforms. It provides a suite of tools designed to guide users through digital processes. It makes it easier for them to complete tasks, learn new features, maximize the use of digital tools effectively. WalkMe solutions include on-screen guidance, contextual help, task automation, analytics, and insights, aimed at improving user satisfaction, reducing support costs, and driving overall business efficiency. What the heck does all that mean? That's what I want
That's a mouthful, if you ask me. I can make it very simple for any listener who's unfamiliar with what is called a DAP, a digital adoption platform. We make software easier to use. And that's really it at the end of the day. It's about simplifying experiences for end users so they can get the value out of the technology that's available to them. And what does that look like, right? And to a private sector organization, it might be that they have a tech spend of over $1 billion on software across their tech stack, and they're not necessarily generating the type of value they thought they would or the exponential efficiency or proficiency that they were promised. And so how do you actually get that value out of that software? Well, you have to make it so that any user, based on their role, their permission level, understands how to use that tool and understands how to get the most out of it. So when it comes to state and local government, we talk about digital services. State and local governments offer a lot of those services digitally these days on websites. And something we hear all the time, and as a California resident, I can only speak for myself here, but when I try to log on and I try to, update my registration for both my car and my sailboat, because I do live here in Tahoe, I got a Catalina 22. Let's forget the fact that I don't actually know how to sail the dang thing, but let's ignore that for now. But I try to register both simultaneously on the DMV website, and lo and behold, I get to the end and it tells me error. Right? I don't know what sort of error. I don't understand why it happened, and feel like I'm banging my head against a wall here. And so it's not intentionally designed to be frustrating. It's intentionally designed to be easy to use, but users are users. So things are not always obvious to us. So WalkMe simplifies that process for any end user, whether you're a constituent or whether you're an employee of an organization or an employee of a government institution. We want to make your day-to-day simpler, and we want to make technology approachable.
I got it. However, I don't have it. Meaning, I understand what you're saying, but what does that actually mean? How does it work? I mean, on the surface, particularly if I'm a client, I could say, hey, it seems like it's a lot of overhead in that, look, I already purchased the software. Now you guys are going to simplify the user experience. Tell me how to make it work. Shouldn't I have known that to begin with? Can you double click on what that all means?
Absolutely. For any listener who has ever tried to create a report in their CRM system, won't name any names here, we'll just say CRM system in general. It can be very laborious, if you would. Maybe you don't know how to find the right segmentation. All I want to know is number of opportunities underneath this account executive's name, but gosh darn it, it's taken a long time to generate this report, understand the different, sections I need to add to it, so on and so forth. So to make this very simple for everyone, WalkMe overlays on top of these environments and tells me where to go, what to do, even automates the empty button clicks and steps in a process that could feel redundant. And you're right, Al. It should be that simple. It should be, I bought this technology, I should be able to get the value out of it. It's XYZ for this particular thing, and I should be able to do exactly that with it. But the nature of technology is it's robust. It has many capabilities. You want something that can do so many different things because that means you're getting a bang for your buck. But what that actually means for an end user is it's complicated and it has a lot of functionality. So if you want to get the most out of it, you need to be able to have the end user have ease of use with that technology. So here's WalkMe. We overlay and we say, hey, Al, as a VP at IBM, you come into this technology every day to do X, Y, and Z. Click here and we'll generate this report for you. Click, 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 done. And then it pauses at the points at which you, Al, would need to provide intervention. Maybe you need to add in information that isn't just automated at this point. So you can think of WalkMe as human process automation. It's not full robotic process automation because there's still a human involved, still need your input, but there are many aspects of it that are redundant and don't necessarily need your brain power in order to get through that process. So WalkMe, again, simplifies technology, layers on top, and guides users through processes, business processes inside those applications.
Do you study it and then do a services engagement and then create a user experience with an application that sits on top of it to provide the simplicity that you're describing?
So it's a great question. WalkMe is comprised of both an analytics offering, so we can study where the users experience friction. We're not just taking shots in the dark. We're not just saying, this is where we assume people get frustrated or they get bottlenecked. We actually look at the data where we can aggregate data on any third-party web-based application that's in a browser. So we can say, hey, across this business process, 380 of your 800 users got stuck here for longer than 5 minutes. So then we provide the intervention of WalkMe, which is a low-code, no-code technology that's point and click. When you are a WalkMe customer, you have something called a WalkMe editor, and it allows you to create in-app guidance with the click of a button. So if you want to help somebody through entering in a large text field where people are getting stuck and confused, you can have WalkMe inject a template. So if you're trying to say, I'm having a technical issue, I'm submitting a support ticket, WalkMe will automatically inject into the field, what type of browser are you using? What's the type of laptop you have? And all of those questions that a support agent might need answered. So instead of having that back and forth to get that information, it's all submitted at one time. So again, WalkMe is point and click, and it's proprietary when it comes to its capturing algorithm, because we are layered across all of the major applications across all of the Fortune 500 tech stack. We understand through, again, this proprietary capturing algorithm, how to append to these elements, how to click here, how to tell a user in this field, do X. So you have somebody who is a WalkMe builder who creates the in-app guidance after looking at the analytics to understand where are users experiencing friction. So yes, it's an additional layer, but it actually helps you get the value out of these technologies that you're sold, where you're left kind of holding the bag if end users aren't necessarily as able to navigate that technology as you were sold. It would be as easy to navigate.
So after you do the analytics, which I kind of like, it's almost like quality assurance in that you're able to see, all right, this is what you think you're doing. We've went and measured X number of clients. They're getting stuck in this specific area. Like for 20 minutes, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll alleviate that 20 minutes. And then you're able to put a layer on top of it that mimics human behavior. So
it can.
As if I was sitting at the terminal, or what?
It can. So WalkMe can be interacted with in a variety of ways. We have something called Smart Tips. Think of them as tool tips. You hover over it and it provides you with contextual information. So again, if you know that in this free text field, users experience issues, they can hover this icon that you easily add in, no code necessary. You just say, I want to put this question mark on the screen right here. And when a user hovers it, I want it to have a link to a text article, or when the user hovers it, it's a hyperlink. And when they click on it, it automatically injects a template into this open text field. It can do anything you really want it to. So when I say it simplifies the user experience, that seems very vague, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve. It can also be those bubbles and balloons you think about on a screen, that when you're a new user of an application, it says, hey, welcome to XYZ platform. Let me give you a tour. So it can exist in a variety of ways, but guided tours don't actually work. Most people just click out of them. If you do provide contextual guidance where you know users experience friction, they're very likely to engage with it. So you can have WalkMe automatically engage with the user, or you can leave it up to the user to interact with WalkMe to say, okay, I want to click on this button to get what I need, or I need help here. And then WalkMe springs into action and assists the user. And like I said, it also can automate things for users. So if you want to generate a report, it might do 90% of the clicking through the process for you. And then again, when Al, you are required to enter in certain information, it allows you to do that and then finishes the process on your behalf. It even goes cross-application, because we know most business processes don't just exist in one application. It may be hopping to multiple applications to finish a process, if you would. So I hope that helps you wrap your head around how it can help.
What is in scope versus out of scope then? Where do you draw the line? Where are the limits? What's out of bounds?
Great question. So out of bounds is entirely robotic process automation. It cannot interact in a way where if human information is required, it can't do that for you, right? Like if you think about RPA in the most simple version of it, right. You think about you click on a button on a website that says forgot my password. Every single time it happens the same. Something happens on the back end where you get sent an email to your inbox and you reset your password. No human is needed for that process. That's true robotic process automation. You can have the same system happen the exact same time. However, when you think about generating a report in Salesforce, for instance, or any CRM that you use, HubSpot, so on and so forth, Sugar CRM, whatever. And I say that because my job is a lot of living inside a CRM system and generating reports to report back to the business on. I have to be involved in that process. It can't just automatically generate the report because there are variables where I have to input in information. It just doesn't happen the same every single time. So that's where the limits of WalkMe lie, is it will not just do robotic process automation, but it will do 90% of the stuff that doesn't require your brain, and the things that require you, the human being, it's going to stop and pause and allow you to enter in that information. So it's human process automation versus robotic process automation.
Why not venture into RPA?
It's not our space. That's not what we're here for. We're here to make technology simpler to use. And we know that if we remove all of the redundancies and the things that you have to do the thing, but aren't necessarily requiring your brain space or brain power, then we're more likely to get the results that we need, which is humans engaging with software in a meaningful way.
So you don't think you'll even head into RPA in the future? It's not part of your core competency.
No, I think for anybody who recently joined our user conference, WalkMe Realize yesterday, WalkMe X is the future of our product, which is having an AI co-pilot, something that a lot of individuals are speaking about, but the lack of context when it comes to AI co-pilots is really where they fall down. And I won't speak out of turn. I think Dan Adika, our CEO, does a fantastic job talking about WalkMe X, but that is the future of our product, where we are able to provide context with AI co-pilots to make sure that end users engage with AI in a way that's meaningful. And Al, I know you know way more about AI than I do, but at the very early stages of AI, you have to be able to prompt it properly. Well, guess what? Very few people understand how to prompt AI. So that's just the beginning of how WalkMe is going to help in this next stage when it comes to getting the most out of technology.
Is that the new next product that's coming out, or is it already here?
It is already here for our existing customers.
If I'm a new customer, you're not going to give it to me, or what?
It's something that we are in testing with our existing customers.
I see. In beta, kind of early release. Okay, I got it. What's unique about SLED then? Why SLED?
Why SLED for me, or why SLED for the WalkMe market?
Both. Let me give you some more context based on your return question is, look, your responsibility, SLED, you talked about at the beginning of the call that you were asked to come in and lead SLED. So I got to believe that there is a big element or opportunity for WalkMe in this essentially digital human services around government that differentiates among other industries. I'm sure it's available in every other industry, but you're specifically targeting the government. So yes. Why target the government?
Well, it's actually very simple. So the private sector is driven by something called P&L, right? We're a capitalistic society. We are here to help save money and make more money. That's how that works. The government operates very differently, as you can attest to, Al. It's about serving constituents, and it's about providing a service to individuals that rely on the government to meet their needs. So it's really, really cool to now move into this segment because the motivation for SLED is very different, but they're in critical need of something like a digital adoption platform. Because Al, tell me, in the past 10 months even, how frequently have you heard the word modernization in either Missouri state government or any of the other surrounding states, or even here in California, right? How often do you hear the
I hear it like every second of the day, so much so that it's getting abused. You know, I got to clarify what the hell somebody's talking about when they talk about modernization. It's so ubiquitous at this point.
Absolutely. When I hear the word modernization, I immediately in my head, the flashing siren goes off of, like all you read about on government technology are modernization projects that have gone sideways, if you would. So modernization is the idea of taking legacy platforms and bringing them up to date, up to speed, all of that. But there's a lot of technical debt that comes along with that. State governments have been doing things a certain way for a very long time, whether it's a paper process or whether they've been using a system that's run on COBOL. They've been doing things a certain way for a long time. And now they're modernizing. They're jumping into the cloud space. They're using these SaaS applications in droves. And so now is a great time to bring WalkMe into the conversation because we want to help these government organizations realize the potential of these technologies and learn from what the private sector really took a beating on, which is you can make all of these investments, but ultimately, how do you improve efficiency and proficiency when constantly introducing new technology to an individual or a group of individuals? And WalkMe really is the solution.
I presume that you get a lot of feedback or pushback, perhaps, although I can tell you're a fantastic seller, that you're putting a solution on, but not maybe fixing the core of the issue, like government infrastructure, by example. It can be a mess in terms of siloed data, lack of governance.
Decentralized.
Look, I think they could have a huge win in modernization in terms of what you described with WalkMe, but do they often give you pushback saying, hey, I need to correct the fundamental problem before I make that move?
The answer is yes, right? Why would somebody want to, after going through the pain of a modernization project where they're hiring implementers, they're working with the GSIs of their choice, right? They're going through a lot. But at the end of the day, what WalkMe is about is the user who is left to their own devices ultimately, because so many things come out of requirements, but so few or so infrequently of the time do the end users get considered, right? They are an afterthought to these large scale projects that are grand, but at the end of the day, the success of those projects 100% rely on end users engaging with that technology in a meaningful way. And if you don't take them into consideration and you don't put that as part of the process, and if you don't have an agile approach, you are really damning those individuals to failure and frustration in their jobs. And so we are passionate advocates for helping interject WalkMe into the conversation, because end users should be thought of all of the time. And if you don't have a way to monitor how users engage with these applications that are now being implemented at a voracious rate, then you have no way of being able to metric success, in my humble opinion. So that's when you're talking about state employees. But really, the huge potential here and what we are driven by is improving digital services. I won't say which state, but we recently engaged with the DMV that now uses WalkMe on top of their website to improve that user experience. Woohoo! Right? So yes, I mean, it's a tough battle to help people understand the benefits when they already feel underwater and overwhelmed. But I'm here to say, again, the private sector has been benefiting from WalkMe for the past decade. It's time for the public sector to also benefit in those same ways.
Can you tell me, just to kind of wrap this up, how is WalkMe monetized? I mean, if I'm a customer or if I'm a listener, what should I expect from that perspective? What should I expect in the sales cycle? And I know this is all depends, but how long does it take to implement something like WalkMe?
You know, you're right, Al. It does all depend because it comes with scoping a project. If you're asking for us to go live, with a project like the DMV, I'd say we had a straw man stood up in less than 3 months, and you can go live in about 4 months. But there are other projects that, depending on scope, can take much longer. But I will say, from a monetization perspective, or how we go about, everyone always says, bad to say the word sell. Essentially, if you were to purchase WalkMe, it's depending on the number of end users and the number of applications you're looking to license our product on top of. So it's actually a very simple model. And I know, again, that SaaS-based models, there's this new idea of consumption-based models, and that does come into play with our new WalkMe X tool and with our AI smart tips and stuff like that. So there is consumption-based modeling as well, but at its core, WalkMe is how many applications, how many end users. It's really that simple.
What's your 1-minute pitch?
We make software easy to use. We make your digital services more readily available to every user group, regardless of the language they speak or their digital dexterity. We make your digital services, we make technology easier to use. WalkMe customizes it for your organization. The way you built that business process with that platform, which is unique to you, WalkMe is going to layer on top and make it simpler for your users to do their day-to-day jobs.
Do you know what the technology is behind it?
It's a proprietary capturing algorithm. That's how you build it. That's how you layer it on top of all of these third-party tools. And it's built off of something called deep UI. So it's machine learning. If that element is comprised of, again, this is getting very technical, but CSS selectors, position on screen, text of the button, all of these things, WalkMe is taking into account 7 variables deep plus the graphical user interface to recognize that button that you're appending that WalkMe guidance to.
Where can folks reach you and or WalkMe?
I would say the best way to get in touch is to reach out on LinkedIn. to our VP of Public Sector, Billy Biggs. He would love to hear from any of you on a state or local level when it comes to government, higher education, nonprofit, if you believe that this is something that could benefit you all.
Very good. We will put that in the show notes as well. Thank you for that. Is there anything we missed or we didn't get to?
Not when it comes to the WalkMe product. I do believe that it speaks for itself once you use it and are able to be an end user of it, whether you are the WalkMe builder who creates that in-app guidance or the end user who benefits from it. It's magic once you're able to engage with it. It's very intangible from a description perspective. So I hope I did it justice today.
Yeah, I think you did great. I think you did fantastic. If you don't mind, I still got a couple more questions, but this is more back to the fun stuff. So I always like starting with the fun and with a little fun. Look, rock climbing, how long have you been doing that?
A decade.
A decade. So it doesn't look like you're stopping anytime soon. You're just getting started then.
Absolutely. It's definitely going to be a lifelong pursuit.
How did you get into it?
They opened a small bouldering gym in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Shout out Rodney Biddle. He opened it up. It's called Progression Climbing. And I started going just because it was a new, cool thing in the area. And it had an amazing community of individuals who immediately pulled me outside my comfort zone and said, hey, if you like inside climbing, you should come outside with us. We're going to Boone this weekend. Are you interested? So that's, I got bit by the climbing bug from that experience. And again, it's been something I've been really passionate about since that day.
Now, do you do any mountain climbing?
I do hiking. I mean, I do that pretty frequently. I live in this beautiful, Sierra Nevada, and I frequently climb, to the tops of peaks, if you would, but that doesn't require gear. That's just a little bit more of hiking, if you would.
Yeah, sure. But you're not trying to cross a number of summits off your list or anything else.
No, I'm not that ambitious. I will say that I likely will never be an ultra runner. I think that falls into that category.
That involves too much work for me. I'm with you 100%. So let me switch gears on you. What's true, but no one agrees with you on?
Truth is in the eye of the beholder, first and foremost. And you know that when two people experience something, there's their version, the other person's version, and then the truth. So that's a tough one in the sense that what's true, but nobody else knows to be true. Gin is the best spirit to mix with when it comes to cocktails.
You're ready to go back. Gin, seriously? No, that's not true.
There you go.
It's bourbon.
There you
Although
go.
that would be mine. Mine would be bourbon. I know nobody mixes with bourbon. I mean, like I said, a bramble or something like that, but it's much better with bourbon, I think. I don't know. I like a good whiskey sour too. You know what the key about the whiskey sour is? See, you're a professional. So what would you say it is?
Yeah, I think you have to have a dry shank and egg white in a whiskey sour. Personally.
Yes, you do. Exactly.
I get that.
You pass a test. I mean, I that's the first thing I do. If I go to a restaurant, I'll say, do you have a whiskey sour? Sure. They always have a whiskey sour. I'll say, do you put an egg white on top of it? And then that's where it goes either downhill or then I know they're a good restaurant because only a good restaurant would do that. And I think it takes the sour out of it. It takes the sweet out. I've even had my favorite margarita has an egg on top of it.
I love that. That's phenomenal.
Yes.
I've never even thought about putting an egg in a margarita, but you know what, Al? That might be my drink tonight.
I don't want it to be too sweet. I don't want to be too tart. For some reason, I mean, you probably know the chemistry behind it. I don't know. The egg white takes that out of it and dampers it down a little bit. Very good. All right. What advice do you have for women in technology?
I have so much, but I'll distill it down to this. What makes you unique is something you should never try to cover up or, soften. You should lean into your strengths because women far too often are told what their weaknesses are and are trying to improve them versus being coached on their strengths and leaning into those. So be who you are and really lean into what makes you who you are and unique because those things have got you here. If you're already in sales, you're doing a phenomenal job. It's a tough row when it's a male-dominated industry and lean into your strengths. Those things are going to carry you very far.
Who inspires you?
Well, I've had two phenomenal leaders in my time in sales. One is by the name of Matt Bigelow, who actually just became the head of sales at a really interesting AI company, Maven AGI. So I won't say any more than that, but he has been a phenomenal leader and an inspiration in the sense that there are multiple ways to climb the ladder in life. And he has shown me that you don't have to be cutthroat. You don't have to throw people underneath the bus in life. You can simply work really hard every day, be empathetic and genuine, and be an advocate and a sponsor for people who deserve and need that. And you can lead by example. So that's something that I carry with me in my role as a director. I always want to lead by example. And somebody else, Billy Biggs, he has taught me so much about the public sector in the past 2 years. And he has helped me hone this idea that you can have intuition about something. Your gut can tell you it's right. But if you want to bring that forward, you need to back it up with data. You need people who think differently than you to understand that it's a wise decision. And maybe for them, they need to see evidence of that is far more than you saying, I just know it's right. So as a leader, he's somebody who inspires me because he takes very complex things and distills them down into something that's simple. And that concept is something that I think is really important in life.
Anything that you're reading today, anything of interest? How do you learn? That kind of thing?
I think one of the best books I've read in the past year was Jennifer Palka. I hope I pronounced her name right, but she wrote, what was it now? Why government is failing in the digital age and how we can do better. And the first part of that is Recoding America. And it really helps crystallize this idea that if we continue to just have this waterfall approach in government to things and just have requirement after requirement thrown out there without taking more of an agile approach to kind of test as we go and pivot instead of starting a 5-year project and 5 years later going, why did it fail? The idea that we need to be constantly checking along the way and have these project managers in this agile approach. I think that was revolutionary, I think, to say that out loud in government and to stand by it and to write a whole dang book about it. So I think that's phenomenal if you do work in the public sector space to get her perspective on that.
Great suggestion. Given some of the government work I do, I'm going to put it on my list. Thank you for being with us today. It was great to see you again, and I knew you would be fantastic as we had discussed when I saw you in Jeff City.
Thank you, Al. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. We take your feedback seriously. Rate us where you are, and I'll talk to you next time. See you on the podcast.